I use photography as a way to help me understand why I'm here. The camera helps me to see.
The camera sees more than the eye, so why not make use of it? Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 185 for the middle of June, I think, right?
Middle of June 2023.
Yeah, we're close to turning into what, summer, right?
The
solstice.
We're getting pretty much total summer here.
Yeah,
it's solstice, yeah. The longest day is the solstice.
Yeah. We should do it at go find some rock formations and sorry, I don't mean to make fun of the
well, I like the idea of going to rock formations at dawn or something. I think it might be who knows.
Yeah.
Might be mystical, might not.
Might be. Have you ever been to England?
I have not. I know some English people though.
English people. Yeah, I know some too. Yeah. I went to Stonehenge once. And that was an interesting experience, but we had to see it from a distance. They kept us very far away from it, and I didn't get a chance to get up close. I think there was some reason why we couldn't get up close, but I saw one cartoon joke of them like moving the rocks, and the joke was about them changing the clock time, like shifting to daylight savings time.
That's cute.
Yeah, but
not easy.
Yeah, no, not easy. So middle of June. What's happening with you?
We took all our smoke. We gave it to you.
Right. Yeah.
And
thank you. Well, it was from your other half.
Yeah, the other part of the country, which we're all very, terribly regional here, so it's not my fault this time.
Yeah, with a quirk of the weather, we got all the smoke from the fire, and that, by now everybody have seen the photographs of the apocalypse hitting the east coast of the United States and everything turning orange. It looked like the scene from Blade Runner 2064?
2040. 2046. 2038?
2032? Whatever. The second Blade Runner, yeah. And, I looked at, someone put a comparison of the picture of Gosling walking in that orange sky, and then, New York and that. And I sort of remember seeing the behind the scenes of Blade Runner. And, a lot of that is colorizing, right? We're doing colorization. And it made me really think about that. Like, we watch movies, we see them, and we know these scenes that go on, and we think, okay, well, they're part of the story. But if you're technical, you kind of know, well, they probably didn't shoot it in an orange environment, or maybe it wasn't as orange. Yeah. And they went and colorized it. Or not colorized it. They color timed it. The old time phrase. And then the reality is, we have New York and Brooklyn, and I looked out the window and it looked exactly the same. And it just made me think that all that work they do in films to set atmosphere can be based on reality. Like we can actually see colors in the sky and our environment that colorize the scene. So I don't know why it made me think that. It's just that's sort of an odd thing.
I did see one Instagram reel where they were showing drone pictures like over the river and showing the Brooklyn Bridge and going towards downtown Brooklyn and playing some background music from the Blade Runner movie. It was really good. It worked really well.
Someone was flying a drone over there because probably nobody would be able to see it, and they wouldn't get in trouble.
Yeah. Or it was a helicopter. I don't know, but it seemed like
probably a drone.
Probably
People
a drone.
That. Yeah, you're not supposed to fly them over the city.
I know.
I saw one flying out my window a couple days ago too. Not during the smoke, just another day when there was a rainbow. I was like, you're flying this drone. I actually saw it. And I was like, what is that black thing in the sky that's not moving? Got my binoculars, and it was one of the bigger drones. Yeah. But yeah, so thanks for the smoke. It's the equivalent of smoking. 2 packs of cigarettes or something like that.
Yeah.
I went out in the morning. I sent you a picture, and it was getting bad, but it wasn't that bad. But I was walking around with my mask, and by the time I got home, I ended up sending you guys on Discord, our Discord, like like progressive pictures as it was getting worse
and worse.
Yeah. And it was an experience. I was supposed to film a concert that night in Prospect Park in Brooklyn. Taj Mahal was playing, and they obviously canceled it. I was a little concerned because we're going to be shooting out there with masks on. I knew it was going to be kind of smoky. I was like, we need masks, and then it just got worse and worse and worse, and they started canceling everything in the city. And they canceled that until tonight, and of course tonight in Brooklyn it's pouring rain. The exact opposite of the smoke.
Yeah, but you're not working that.
I'm not working that. I wasn't available because I have things to do tonight, this is one of them. So, yeah. But anyway, thank you for the smoke. Hey, Canada, thank you for this. Yeah.
I heard somebody complaining on, like crazy people on social media. Oh, I think I sent you this about the Canadians don't put out their fires because they have free health care. Did you hear that one? That was one of the more bent of the conspiracy theories.
There you
I heard.
Go. Yeah.
That
was that serious, or did it have a smiley face after?
Oh, no, it didn't have a smiley face.
Oh, geez.
Okay. Yeah, crazy people.
Crazy people on the internet. Where do they come from?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyhow, and I just quickly mention, since I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, this is more of my personal thing, but we had our memorial for my wife last Sunday. Not yesterday, but the previous Sunday
before.
And everything went perfect. I mean, as an event, because this is an event, getting all the things together. But we were lucky that we didn't have the smoke that day. It was actually a perfectly beautiful day. And cool. I wanted to mention that I got all my AV stuff working, and I actually live streamed it with no glitches with this little Insta360 camera that I've got now. That you're seeing me on.
Yeah.
So anyway, something like that worked perfectly. But I did two slideshows. Actually, I did one video and a slideshow, and I just want to talk about the slideshow for a quick second. I made this slideshow using some music, non-copyrightable. I mean, copyrighted music, but it's just for us.
Yeah.
And but I used this app I wanted to mention called Photo Magico. It's on the Mac. I don't know if it's on PC. But it helped make the slideshow incredibly easy. And what I was able to do, I would have done it myself in Final Cut and timed it with the music and stuff like that. But this app, actually, if you drop into music, it will find where the beats are and then give you cut marks. And then you can automatically drop in images, and it will match the image, the transition to the beats of the song. And it really worked for this. It really helped put a slideshow together really nice with music and these pictures I did. And it really made the presentation, I don't know what you want to call it, the services, I should say. It summed it up really nicely. It was
good. I'm glad.
Yeah. And so, and a lot of people, actually there was a lot of photography involved in this, and I had actually brought two Polaroid cameras with me, and I gave them out to let people photograph it because I really wanted the physical picture as an artifact of that day, sort of the same thing like I did at the beginning of the pandemic, where I walked around and with my Polaroid camera because it was an actual print that was made on that day, Right. And so I gave my cousin's daughter. She took the camera, or at least she took one of the cameras, and walked around, and I had all this film that was about to expire, or it actually had expired. I was like, let me just see what happens with it.
Yeah.
And she shot tons of pictures with it. So at some point I'll put those up and show them. It's just regular snapshots. But anyway, there was a lot of nice photography. So anyway, I wanted to mention that app. And leading into the first thing I want to talk about, speaking about apps and stuff, the big news in the Apple world, I know we're not such a gear thing, but I had to talk about this, is the VisionPro goggles, the spatial computing is what Apple's calling it. The augmented reality, virtual reality, ski goggles, which, first of all, I'm just going to say, I want them.
Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. I've been wanting, actually, the first time I played with VR a while back, which with Oculus first came out, someone I met let me run some beta software on one. And I was blown away by it. I was like, this is crazy, you know, and it was a bigger headset. It was very uncomfortable. And I was, you know, wow, this is not like that. I know you said you didn't catch the
No, I just saw the headlines. I don't know anything about its specifications or computing required to drive it or anything like that.
Yeah, without going into all that, you know, there's the thing has got 1 million cameras on it, and that's not, you know, not hyperbole. I mean, it really has like, I think at least half a dozen cameras on the outside, and then a bunch of infrared sensors on the inside. But I want to talk about the cameras on the outside, because one of the things they talked about was that it can photograph in 3 dimensions, 3D, right? And that you can play it back. When you play it back on the headset, it's a very immersive experience, watching what you had just filmed. So they show this scene of this father, you know, filming with the headset on, his daughter playing with another little girl. And it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Because the first thing I thought about, and this is going to date me, and a lot of people who are listening to this probably never heard of it. It's a very obscure movie. There was this movie in the early 80s or late 70s, I can't remember the exact date, by Albert Brooks. No relation to Mel Brooks, as far as I know, right? Yeah, it's just Albert Brooks. He used to write comedy, I think, for Saturday Night Live. He was anyway, also an actor. He did this movie, which was like what do you call a fake documentary? Mockumentary?
Mockumentary, yeah.
Mockumentary, which I didn't think it had that phrase back then. It was called Real Life, and it starred Charles Grodin and some other people. And Albert Brooks is in it. And Albert Brooks plays a filmmaker who wants to film a family in real life. Like, he wants to be in place with his cameras and stuff like that, and follow a family. And he invents, or someone invents, these cameras that the cameramen are supposed to wear. And I'll put the pictures of these in the show notes. You can see them. They look like sort of upside down garbage can, like space helmets, right? Okay. With this thing in the front, and they're white with this sort of, you know, smoky glass thing where the camera's supposed to be. And they're walking around holding the camera like their arms are up, and it's the most ridiculous thing. And of course, they sort of don't blend into the background. Anyway, I'm watching this Apple thing, and it looks like the same thing, except the guy is standing there, and, you know, it's just a headset, and he's fiddling around with the buttons on the side, and he's filming these kids. And it's like, I'm trying to imagine this in real life. Like, there will be people who do this, because I actually know people who like will go to an event of their own child's event and will spend the entire time behind the camera and set up lights and stuff like that. But to me, it's the most crazy thing to see. And so I just wanted to mention that, but I do think that that's going to be a future that we're going to be running into, this immersive photography thing. Like, and I thought, like, if I was going to do something like that, why not just set the damn headset up on a tripod?
Right.
You know, and then I get into then it's just filming us doing our thing. And then I'm in it as well. And I'm not spending time behind these goggles, like, you know, 5 steps.
You don't have to be you trying to imagine what you're going to say next. You can just watch the conversation. Right.
Well, it also reminded me of, I think I maybe talked about this a long, long time ago, but when I used to go on trips with my camera and I used to photograph stock, and when I used to get the pictures back, that my memories of where I was, like I went to Germany or something like that, and I'm looking at the pictures of the bridge in Heidelberg, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I saw, because I spent my time looking at the scene through my camera, viewfinder. That's my memory of it. So the picture is an accurate representation of my memory, because I wasn't looking at it with my eyes. I was looking at it through my, camera and telephoto lens. And so anyway, I think that's something to sort of, I don't know, dwell on a little bit. I mean, this thing is not going away, and I'm sure there are going to be other kinds of technology that does the same thing. And maybe even, someone will come out with a 3D camera that then you can watch the video or photographs through a headset like the VisionPro and get the same kind of experience. Mm-hmm. But this idea of like being removed from the event, like you're part of the event, but you look like an idiot, filming it. It's like with this headset on and not being actually part of it, but then looking at it, replaying it, and that's the memory you have, because you were there looking through those goggles, and that's where the cameras were, and that's your recollection of the event. Of course, you were not part of the event at all. You're just this observer. Maybe if you hired somebody to walk around. But anyway, the pictures, you'll see the shots of the real life headsets, the real life camera operators, and to me it was exactly the same thing. It's just like, yeah, you look very out of place there. But I think this is just our getting used to this. This is now,
well, we had Apple 10 years ago. We had Google goggles, right? That was sort of
I had the cardboard version of those.
Yeah,
I bought a cardboard version of it, but I never. That's one where you stuck the phone in there, right? And
what they had, there was actually a pair of glasses that had a camera.
Oh, there was,
and then a little prism kind of thing with a small display that you could move. Select, I don't know, it was on the side of the stem of the glasses, whatever. You could select different options, and you could have the temperature on, on the bottom left corner,
just so you can see it all
walking around all the time. Hey, it's still 78 degrees.
Anyway, I thought it was cool. I think there's, this is going to take a step in a new direction, especially with media. Mm-hmm. Filming, a lot of the descriptions that they were talking about with the immersive descriptions of being like in the middle of a baseball game or like on courtside seats in a basketball game, better than reality and stuff. And who knows, maybe Apple's doing this right. And certainly they've opened the door, I think, now to something new. But I'll be really curious. And I want it, this will be interesting to see, in 9 months when it comes out, what will be done with it. And anyway, but
you'd spend $3,500 on it, but then know that you don't have to spend $12 on a hot dog at the ballpark.
Right. Just get your own hot dogs.
That's right.
But I do like the idea of giant screens. So anyway, whatever. I just wanted to mention that because it was in the news and it just caught my attention as a photographer. And the door is open. I mean, who knows what is going to come from this, but I do want to sort of keep an eye on this. That's bad.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you're saying.
So what's you want to talk about your experience with
my thing, what I'm doing. When did we talk about journaling? Did we talk about it in the last episode?
It was the last episode.
Yeah. I decided to go down that route and I had a photograph in mind that was sort of my initial inspiration. And it was a Alfred Stieglitz picture of I guess a donkey or a horse with its towing rig on. It's very interesting. When we were looking at it after the last show, we were saying it's all got triangles. The whole thing is nothing but triangles in the composition. It was about the kind of the strength and grace and animals and that sort of thing. And so this last weekend was the Hand Hills Lake Stampede, which is, if you know me or listen to me for any period of time, we have this book with Mark Ryerson and me created this book of photographs that are about where the stampede or the rodeo is actually the subject of the book. And this was me using that journal to try and give myself a mindset for what I was going to do when I was shooting. And it was very liberating on a couple of fronts.
Sorry, can you describe the journal? And what were you doing?
Oh no, all I did was write some notes about what I was thinking.
Okay.
About I wanted it to be not necessarily for someone else to view, but it was going to be a more internal exploration of what I see at the rodeo, and not be bound by time or the need to cover everything. I could sort of go at whatever my whim was or whatever I felt and what I saw. In a lot of ways, I didn't take a lot of pictures were kind of similar to what I would have taken for the book, but they were framed differently. They were framed in a more, you could call it haphazard, but a looser way, so that the pictures were more evocative. I wanted to, evoke a feeling about the rodeo or a feeling about the animals, a feeling about the competitors that was more abstract than what we were trying to do with the book.
How many days were you there for?
3.
Oh, so you were the whole thing?
The whole thing, yeah. So we came on the Thursday night, and then there's the lead up. There's a full day it's 4 hours from noon until 4 of competitors that have to be somewhere else that weekend. So they come on the Friday and they compete, and then they take off for the rest of the weekend. And then the 2 main days, or the show, or whatever you want to call it, which is Saturday and Sunday. And then there are cabarets each night. There was a cabaret Friday night and a cabaret Saturday night. So I also took photographs of the people reveling in there and the band that was playing, and just these different environments or different ways that people interact with each other, which is definitely a common theme. I mean, it didn't get that from the street. And I do have a kind of a background project called the Love Book Project that I have, which is just people interacting in a human way. So sort of a mind meld is the wrong word, a melding together. It's a Star Trek. It comes out, whatever. It's just a melding together of all these things that are going on, but with the context of the rodeo. So it was great because I was working inwardly. I was just thinking about, do I want to take a picture of this? No. Do I want to take a picture of this? Oh, yeah, I know there's something interesting going on here. And, there's abstract patterns and those sorts of things where I could just create a pattern of an image as opposed to something that documents something.
And it's a lot different than how you approached the book with Mark, right?
Yeah, because we were it was a destination. It was a place to put things for other people to enjoy, put images for other people to appreciate and enjoy. And so the construction part of that was putting it together in a form that is usable and enjoyable and appreciated by other people, where this was not that. I just went after whatever I wanted. And it was really liberating for that reason. It felt weird at first, but when I started to shoot, I did have one technical, not really issue, but a hurdle to overcome was I used an adapted lens from the early 80s, a Nikon Nikkor 135 f2.8. What an amazing lens that is. So that's
an oldie too. I mean,
that's an oldie, and
it's been around for a zillion years. Yeah.
Yeah. And thank goodness it has the depth of field markings on it, because
why?
Because I was often shooting at f8 and f11, and I could get everything from 20 meters to 60 meters, or everything from 20 meters or whatever it is, 60 meters to infinity, or just so that I could zone focus a little bit. I could use the hyperfocal at smaller apertures, and it was great. And I needed to use smaller apertures anyway, because it was very bright when I was shooting there, and I didn't want I wanted things to be stopped down a little bit so I could get some of the slower shutter speeds I wanted, because I wanted the blur to happen without.
Do the depth of field scales work? I mean, that's a lens for a full frame camera for a 35mm film.
Yeah.
Does it work the same on the smaller sensors at the same depth of field scale?
I believe so, because it's focusing in the same place, right?
Right. So it doesn't change anything, right? It's just okay.
Yeah. So I didn't give it a second thought. I just started using them because it's tough to focus. It's hard. It's difficult to turn the barrel. It's
right. You're doing all manual focus on this thing too.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So, and I was using focus peaking and stuff like that. So, and I had to turn the gain up on the EVF pretty much all the way to the top, so I could see the red fuzz on my subjects when I was using the focus peaking, right? So, and I did get better at it. By Saturday, it was a combination of pre-focusing, knowing what I was going to do, looking at the markings to say, okay, well, when the bull rider gets to this point, I'll be here, and so on. So I was able to get that, and I figured it out. And I'm a big fan. I've borrowed that lens, and I don't want to give it back. Let's put it that way.
Shh, don't say.
Yeah.
You still have it?
Yeah, I still got it. It's I got to take it over. When I have time, I'll take it over. I don't know when I'm gonna have time. It's just been so busy.
I remember having that. I remember. I just wanted. It was one of those lenses that I never ended up getting on my Nikon system. I remember.
I had a Takumar 135 f3.5. It was terrible. It was the first of the bayonet mount Takumars, SMC Takumars, on my my K1000. and it was not. I struggled with it all the time. It was too long or not long enough. It was in the middle. But on a crop sensor camera, it's the equivalent of just over 200 millimeters. That's a sport. Now it's this tiny rig, and I sent you a picture of it, right? With my XE3 and this nice palm-sized telephoto lens, and I'm getting the equivalent of 200 millimeters.
Mostly the weight is on the lens. So
the weight is on the lens, no problem at all.
Yeah. There aren't many 135 millimeter lenses now, I think, in modern cameras. I don't know if that's a popular...
that's a good point. I don't
think so. It used to be very popular back when we were, film photography and whatnot, but I don't see a lot of that now. And there's a lot of in-betweens, but I don't think 135 is a very popular format anymore. So that's interesting.
Yeah. No, it is with me for sure. So anyway, going back to the shooting experience or the kind of, whatever you want to call it, the internal dialogue within myself. So I didn't feel bound at all to have to photograph anything. So I photographed everything. So from the steers waiting to be released in competition to the cowboys sitting up on the fence, fooling around to, there's a picture of my wife and her girlfriend and my cousin's wife chatting, hollering at each other in the cabaret because it's so loud in there. 3 people, strangers, just came up to me and wanted their picture taken. So they lined up and I had the 16 millimeter and they were just putting their fists in the air. I don't know why, but okay, I'm taking advantage of this. I mean, this is weird. All right. Well, one guy had a t-shirt with stars and stripes on it. And I'm like, it's kind of rare to see that in Canada. But that's okay. There's something going on here. So I took that picture. And so there are all these things that just come out of nowhere that were coming at me. So it was good in that way. And I did other things. I took nightscapes of the empty stands that were sort of lit by floodlights and kind of, a landscape almost of the cabaret tent, the beer tent. It was so huge and it was, lit from the inside. So it was kind of interesting.
So are you saying because you had no objective that you're like, in this case, you're not doing a book and stuff like that, you just felt like you had more freedom, just do whatever you want?
Yeah.
It's really interesting. That's so interesting because I would think when you're doing a book, you would want to shoot as much as possible. And then
for coverage, but the feeling is coverage, right? I need to get this and this and this.
Because you want to say you're trying to tell a story with the book. Now you're not trying to tell a story.
Although we said in the introduction we're trying not to do that, but really we did. It starts in the morning and it ends at night. I mean, that's a story, right?
Right. Yeah.
But this one, no, I was just left to, this is interesting. I'm going to shoot this without, there's no external reasons for me not to take a picture. I would just shoot it. And I ended up shooting as much as I would, maybe 2/3 as much as I would when I was shooting the book. So I still did shoot a lot. So I've got a fair amount. I would say I have fewer. My hit rate is probably fewer because I am working on a whim. So an idea I had in a flash wouldn't work because the show rider who went by me went by a little too fast and I missed the moment and that sort of thing. So it was just to kind of spur the moment decisions all the time. So my hit rate was a bit lower, and that's another reason why I'm thinking, among others, that I will make this a multi-year project. And I'm leaving myself open to the fact that I may not even restrict it to just the rodeo, maybe a combination of my street and all that kind of stuff. Because
how come?
Well, because of the mindset I discovered when I was there about this thing of just shoot whatever you want, right? And the way people interacted and, well, there's some personal philosophical stuff that I think I'm starting to think about when I was shooting this project. And it had to do with, my living in the country when I was 18 years old. So when I go back to my cousins in the country, they're in a lifestyle and a pulse of life that I sort of knew 40 plus years ago, right? I'm not of that. I'm from it, but I'm not of it. And I think I'm working through some feelings of, I'm showing the cowboys and the bull riders with their face down in the dust. Like, am I putting a bad spin on their lifestyle or something? Or am I showing, that they're strong and, it's definitely more manly pursuit than working in computers, right? You're chasing after cattle and riding horses and all that kind of stuff, a different kind of lifestyle. So I'm just trying to, things are occurring to me as I'm doing these edits. So I'm doing, very light editing right now just to get the subjects and lining them up in a folder to review over and over and over again. And then nothing, and like with the book, nothing is sacred. Like if I have a better picture to replace it, whether it's in the same collection for this particular weekend, or if it's in the future, I will certainly discard it and replace it with something that says basically the same thing better. But I really like the subconscious part of it. It's sort of like I'm pulling levers and playing notes that I don't exactly know what I'm doing, but I'm still getting, my old expression, pleasing notes from the instrument, right? I'm getting things that have a meaning for me, even if they don't make sense.
Well, do me a favor for a second and translate that experience, because you said you might mix this with your street photography. How will this experience that you had there translate? You say you shoot anything you want. Don't you do that already, or
I do.
It does sound like you have some sort of newfound freedom, and it sounds exciting to do it with your street photography. I'm just saying,
but I have
any different than what you're doing already.
Yeah. So I haven't done any street photography since. So I just have a different feeling. Like I'm looking, when I'm shooting street, I'm looking for the geometry and the way people are arranged. I'm waiting for there to be a moment. It's all very waiting for the plans to converge. Are we get it? Okay, good. Right now, it's a different thing. Mm-hmm. With that, it was very floaty, and you're not trying to, it's not quite as tightly bound. So I would probably end up doing more fragments of architecture and people in, like I've done those pictures before where there are people in the architecture, or there's for scale or whatever. And I don't want it to be a compositional trick to say, wow, this building is really big because look at that little guy there. It's like trying to help the viewer get the scale. I'm trying not to care about any of that.
Right.
I'm trying to just, here's a picture of feet on a grate or something. So it's sort of like the kind of stuff Mark and I were doing early on, 2014, 2015, where we're just trying to find details that fill the frame. This time, I think I can do that a little bit differently and just use this whim, this subconscious click of the shutter, and not worry so much about composition. So yeah, and it's funny, the compositions that I am creating I think are good. They're coming from a different place. And
what a great learning from.
My favorite part of it was not what I expected. So we really got away from the Stiglitz picture, which was just about an animal and the rigging that's on it. Now, where it's like, this is Ward exploring what he sees, and not just that, but what I might feel about what's going on around me, as opposed to constructing compositions and so on.
It kind of makes you think you don't want to wait for the next rodeo. It's like,
there's plenty of small town rodeos. It's just I won't have the same access that I do there, right?
Oh,
because they allow me to go behind the chutes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, they do. Yeah, that's nice to have that.
Yeah, so that's nice. And if you ever come up here, I will certainly take you back there.
And so ultimately, you planning something with these images? You're going to show them, not show them? You don't know yet?
I won't show them. I don't think I'll show them in social media. I don't think they would be understood very well, and that's fine. And I think I would just rather hoard them. I mean, I did share some with you and us in the collective, just to say, this is definitely a different tack for me, and that it's, like I say, it's liberating, and I don't have any problems with, whether you like them or not. This is the direction I'm going, and it's it's very cool, and I feel like I'm going somewhere with this. So yeah, so that's what's going on there. I'll print some of these pictures just on our little HP printer and stick them into the journal and write down the observations, many of which I just shared with you here, and put them in there, and then ask myself a bunch of questions about what it is I want to do next, what are the questions? Am I really like, dissing manhood in the country, or am I dissing my own manhood, or am I, all that kind of stuff, like where are the differences? And that was a complete surprise to me.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So, we're making some interesting progress. And, I'm
well, if you're ever for sharing any of those pages, I mean, just curious, like, you don't have to share it with no, I don't, like, I'd like to see it. I'm not saying everybody else could see it.
Yeah. Well, I've got a really poor, like, school notebook thing I'm putting in, but there's only a couple of pages. So I'm going to transcribe that into a proper, it's not going to be moleskin, but it'll be nice. and I will print my little pictures and stick them in there with my chicken scratch writing. And part of it is you may not be able to read my writing, which is good because it'll all be code. It'll all be cartouches and whatever, hieroglyphics.
Well,
anyway.
Cool. So that all reminds me that of our I would say our main topic, but the thing we kind of wanted to talk about also about showing pictures is we both watched the recent video from our friend Alex Kilby.
Shout out to Alex if you're listening.
Yes, Alex.
Listen. Please listen, Alex.
And if you don't know who Alex Kilby is, go and subscribe to his video feed on YouTube called The Photographic Eye. Great show talking about, like us, not the hows of photography, but the whys. He does dabble in the hows, but it all sort of comes together. But anyway, the recent video that he put up, which caught both of our attention, was I think the title was the Mayor Paradox, the biggest lie social media feeds photographers, talking about Vivian Maier and her extensive body of unseen work, and how are people photographers? Are we photographers if we don't show our work? Which I thought was, sort of the equivalent of if a tree falls in the forest and there's nobody there to hear it. Does it make a noise, or does the tree even fall?
Right.
And so I thought we'd talk about that too, in sort of relationship to what you're talking about, your in some way about your rodeo pictures, or your idea for the whole thing, and the fact that you're not going to be showing them on social media. And I thought, and so anyway, what did you think about the video? What was going on in your mind?
I thought it was,
or about the content, about what he was talking about. And it's not about Vivian Maier, although she's sort of the focal point of this.
Yeah, she's the focal point because her work is so authentic, interesting, and follows a tradition of mid-century American photographers, American street photographers, which are our inspiration. I mean, you and me, this is our source material for our photo DNA, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I found it interesting in that it's Vivian Maier's a complex subject because she tended to be a recluse. She was a bit of a hoarder. She was a strange and interesting person. But when she went out on her walks with her kids that she was babysitting or nannying for, she did this amazing work. And she kept it to herself. They said that she did very little of her own printing and processing, but she had very specific instructions for the chemist or whomever was processing the images. So she was a technical photographer. We know this about her, and that she was quite methodical. And, you follow the chronology of her work, and the one commentator that we read had said that she was working through her technique as she matured, and she was a full-on street photographer, certainly towards the end of her life, or the end of her working life anyway. I found it interesting in that she did keep to herself. She didn't share, and I think I'm just trying to think if there were some prints that were made that were hung up somewhere. Like it wasn't very often anyway. It doesn't matter.
No.
It might be in the documentary. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the documentary.
Yeah.
But she had a mature vision that nobody saw. And for people like us, who say, what might have been if we had never seen them, we're poor for not having seen them. But did she really want to be seen? She might have just been doing it for her own enjoyment, and that's her right as an artist.
That's the thing that I want to say bothers me about it. The longer I've thought about her situation, she didn't process tons of film. There was stuff that was found in her storage place. We also have to remember that Gary Winogrand had thousands of rolls of film that I don't know, thousands, but a lot of film that he left when he died. I'm guessing he didn't expect to die and not process them, but he didn't process them immediately. And I always think in Gary's circumstances that he was more. I always felt like he was more about taking the pictures,
right,
and less about what they looked like after they were processed or something like that. Which I don't know if that's what was going on with Vivian Maier as well. I mean, if she just didn't have the time, and we'll never know this story. But there's this part of it that makes me think this is sort of a side story to it a little bit, that I mean, we don't know how she would feel. I mean, my guess is she took pictures on her own. She didn't share them as much, which maybe meant that she didn't want people to see them. This was just something that she did. And she wasn't into fame or notoriety or wanting to show the world her vision. Like, none of that seemed to come across, because if it did, I think she would have probably spent more time, showing her work. But do we have the right? I mean, we're better off seeing her work than not seeing her work. And the fact that she's dead, she has no say in it, and she didn't leave any instructions about that.
Right.
But like, how do we feel that, this is something that, I feel like we're looking into her private life, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? And the genie is out of the bottle, so we can't not look at it now. Right. But, did she mean that to happen? And my guess is not, because of her circumstances and the way she left things. But, that's one thing. But the idea that Kilby brings up, and maybe he's getting it through other people, watch his videos so you can get his ideas on this, is that she is someone like Vivian Maier, less of a photographer because she doesn't show her stuff. And I was like, because today we're sort of saturated in social media and this idea of producing something new, and like even the work that you're doing now at the rodeo, there's this pull, we all feel it, to oh, I just photographed this great stuff, let me now show it to the world and get everybody get a dopamine hit from it, and then move on. And when you and I grew up, there was none of that really. No. And I even think about this, like, I didn't, and I can't remember when social media really first started to take hold. And I remember this idea of sharing pictures. Who was I talking about this with? Was it Dave on our Discord? I can't remember. Oh, but this idea of like sharing pictures was so freaking alien to me. Like, I was like, why would you do this? It's like, why would I start posting my pictures up like this? And now I don't even think we don't even give it a second thought. And well, maybe we do.
I think we found space to, knowing now that we're out to walk in the street, knowing that we can post what we're doing. I mean, I find it a bit of a motivation in that my dopamine hit is putting it out there and getting the likes, and whatever you want to say about that, it's true, even if it's one or two. But in the old days, our dopamine hit was going to the drugstore and picking up the
but that was pictures. For us. That was our own self-contained
that was just us,
system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did that make us less photographers? I mean, I shot a lot of stuff, like I said, for stock, and I would go and get it, and I would submit it, and so it wasn't really shooting for myself. That was my job to do. But for my own personal work, there was that same waiting to get the Kodak boxes sent back to me from Fair Lawn. and getting excited by that and sitting there on the light box and looking at the pictures. But then, behind me, you're seeing right here, it's like 5 bins of slides, that, some of those I shot for myself and they weren't meant to be seen, or, it was just doing it for some, but when I was photographing those things, did I say, well, I'm not a photographer because I'm not showing it. I don't think that ever came across my mind. And it's interesting that that's coming up now, because why would it be any different? Just because we have social media or all these ways of viewing our pictures or sharing them, why would that make anybody less a photographer?
Well, we've been conditioned to, with social media came a bunch of behaviors and social procedures and aspects around it. And people started to identify as photographers. I don't know that there's I think that it's different for different people in different contexts. I know there are people who take pictures that don't ever want to share them. They're deeply personal. They're family snaps. They'll get them, maybe they'll get them printed or put them in an album or something, do a Shutterfly or an Apple book thing and just put it on the shelf. I know lots of people like that.
There are lots of people. Actually, I was just my sister-in-law's brother was just offering to sell me his film equipment. It was like a Nikon FM and some lenses. I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. But he takes all these pictures. He's got some good equipment and he knows photography, but he's not, as far as I know, in a camera club or, just shooting for himself. All the slides are in, pictures that he looks at on the trips that he takes,
Yeah. How much do you want for that FM? Because I got some Nikon lenses here that are stuck with adapters.
That's interesting.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I just lost my train of thought, but that's not you. Sorry. That's me. No, that's me. Because I had a thing. I was looking at the notes we had down about, this Kilby talks about in the video, and I'm not sure he knows this for a fact, but, that Vivian Maier was probably, aware of the photographers in her time period, whoever was showing their work, or, he said, the way he said it was, that was interesting. It was on her, on her feed, on her news feed, quote unquote. Yeah. I don't know if we know that, and whether or not Vivian Maier's work is derivative of other photographers, or she's just really doing her own thing. I mean, the fact that she's probably less influenced by other photographers just for the sheer fact that someone in her time period is just not seeing as many images as we are, and yet we're in sort of this echo chamber of photography now, where the pictures that we do, even if we are doing them for ourselves and not planning to show them, how much are they getting influenced by the people and the photography that we see through all the medium that we're exposed to these days. And the idea is like, well, what if we don't do that? Like, how do we, and what you're describing before about your experience at the rodeo, that you have this sort of starting point, this Stieglitz picture as sort of it's a single shot. And we'll put this in the show notes because it's a really interesting picture. Like, that is sparking you in. Help me out with this, because
it was
because this works into this story,
because it's an old picture that I know from a long time ago,
right? And but this somehow ties into this thing that we're talking about with Maier and being a photographer, and stuff like that. So,
but just to close the loop on that, I wanted, because it's animals. I'm taking pictures of people with animals and whatever the relationship between them. You had to start somewhere. This project had to start somewhere, and a big proponent of, okay, what is it is there a problem I'm trying to solve? Is there something I want to explore? Okay, what could I do? The Stiglitz picture. I'll start there. And then once I got there, I was maybe about 10 minutes thinking about the Stiglitz picture. And then I saw other stuff. And it took me, and then I was off to the races, as it were, after that.
Right.
So now I've lost my train of thought with Vivian Maier.
Well,
I mean, it was just where she was on the street, right? And the type of equipment that she had, that twin lens that she had, it offers its own way of working, its own way of seeing. It forces you to be formal, I think, because the images are, laterally reversed. And I mean, I'm kind of just filling in nonsense here, but it's sort of like the mode of operating the camera kind of puts you in this kind of formal and interesting dynamic and aesthetic just by its nature.
That's true. The other thing I wanted to touch on, which now I just got back to my train of thought too, was that, Myers is working for an audience of one.
Yes.
For herself, right? As far as we can tell. I mean, there's no real information that she's shooting for an audience or somebody else, and she's working for an audience of one. And are we still doing that today, or are we not doing that? Are we, even like, I start to think now out loud, I'm reacting to my audience, which is the local Facebook groups that I'm posting my pictures of the neighborhood and that zine that I made. And I'm reacting in some way, and it becomes a feedback loop because I post the pictures first of all, and then people respond and say, I really like seeing the details of it. And so I'm there going off and finding more details and finding, and it becomes a cycle. And am I working for an audience of one myself? In some way I am, because I enjoy taking these pictures, but am I influenced by the audience, which can be the case.
Right.
And, I mean, we're going off in a different direction here about like whether or not a photographer and not sharing the work, but there's a lot to this video and there's a lot to this story. So, you're working in the rodeo now for an audience of one. That's right. It's you. And because if we're working in an audience for one, does that make us a photographer? And I don't even know how to answer that question. I mean, it's like, or does it even need an answer? The fact that someone's even asking that question or would ask that question, is it even worth a response? Part of me wants to say, no, that's not a valid, question. What does that mean? Are you a photographer? I mean, that's it.
Well,
it's
I'm using
a lot more
a camera,
complex.
And I look like a photographer when I'm working.
Do you identify as a photographer?
Yes, I identify as a photographer.
That brings up the question: if I'm using a plunger, does that make me a plumber?
A plumber,
or fixing my sink or installing, a gas stove or something like that? Does that make me a plumber? No, it just makes me someone who knows how to do that kind of stuff. But anyway, I don't know if that's a fair comparison.
No, my gut tells me that yes, we are photographers, even if it's an audience of one. We're going through the process of creating the images. Now, Winogrand, leaving 3,600 rolls of undeveloped film.
It was 3,600?
I think it was, Tom Roma. There was on PBS, there was a American Masters show about Gary Winogrand. And if you're a fan at all and you have a PBS subscription, it comes around about once a year. Definitely worth watching. I don't care if you're not a street person, a street photographer, a street person. You could, street people appreciate photography too. They're welcome to.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting reflection on his life and the way he worked. And so, with Winogrand, I think because he had a child very late in life who he was carting around with him while he was still working in the street, and his failing health. His life was more complicated towards the end, and that probably contributed to that entropy that happened with, just jamming a bunch of rolls of film in the desk and saying he'll get to them. But no, I think with Vivian Maier, she's clearly passionate about what she was creating. I mean, you look at the care that went into many of those images, all the ones that I saw exhibited here. The last social, whatever public thing I did before the pandemic was go see the Vivian Maier exhibit that was here at the Glenbow Museum. And I think it was it January or February 2019. And it was interesting to see. It was interesting to see her perspective on things. If you don't want to call her a photographer, at the time she was actually shooting for herself. Now that you say the genie's out of the bottle and we're all looking at these images, well, of course she was a photographer. That maybe that's the way that I would think about it.
And so
she was an artist, a photographic artist.
An artist, and someone who didn't necessarily think that at the time when she was doing it. Maybe, we don't know. But we all, I don't know by myself. I go back and forth, like whether I'm an artist or photographer or whatever the hell I am. Putting all these labels on things is
right.
I don't know what this whole thing about putting labels on things, like why not just take the pictures and, who cares about the label ultimately?
Yeah.
Because in the end result is we've created these images. They're seen or not seen, or eventually they might be seen or they might be lost to time. And we don't know how many Vivian Maiers have been in the world that we will never see. Or they have yet to be discovered. And whether or not they're considered photographers or not doesn't really matter, because in the end, we're hopefully going to see how they viewed the world. So what if if someone labels you a photographer, who cares? I'm going to say, excuse me, but I'm going to say, who gives a shit? Yeah. I don't curse on this too much, but this really deserves that. So what? If someone is going to label you as not a photographer because you're not displaying your work or you're not sharing on social media or something like that, if that's going to affect you and what you do, well, then I'm sorry, but that's not how you should be approaching this art or this thing that we do to express ourselves. If you're going to go by the judgments of other people and the words and the labels that they put on us, fine. It's not worth the effort. So, she would, I don't want to speak for her. I'm just imagining,
that's part of the interesting aspect with her. We're all trying to imagine what she was thinking or feeling because of her particular circumstance. We're all trying to finish the chapter.
What's interesting, you said at the beginning of us bringing up the segment, was that she's an interesting person. She's, just like anybody has a private life and quirks and, whatever. They're calling her a hoarder because she had all this stuff and she had certain particular things. There's a documentary about her which talks about all of her little quirks and stuff, and there's some part of us that, part of me that thinks it's not something that I really needed to know. We all have our stuff, and when I die, someone's going to go through my stuff and start making ideas about who I am and what I did, and they could be true and they could be not true, and ultimately, well, who cares about that stuff? That's in a way none of our business, and even if it becomes our business, how is that going to affect anything? Whether she's a hoarder or did all these things? To a certain extent. She's not a criminal, or something like that. But to a certain extent, I don't care that she collected thousands of newspapers and stuffed them in a storage room. That doesn't affect me about her photography or her vision.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's interesting that there are this need to label people and put them in compartments and decide that someone, either is or isn't something because of some sort of quote unquote rules or guidelines or norms.
And the photography community and social media are the absolute worst of these snap judgments about things,
There is a lot of that. I don't know how that came to be, because it didn't exist. I don't think it existed too much prior to this. I don't know what is it about. What is the drug that social media, and we're not talking about the dopamine, but what is the drug that everybody consume that turns us into, and I'm part of this too, turns us into idiots and critics and stuff on the internet when it really.
Well, because it's on our screen, we want to say something about it.
Yeah.
If we don't like it, we tend to be more motivated to say something we don't like about an image than if we do just give a heart and don't give a positive comment, you know?
Yeah.
Well,
it'd be nice to move away from that a little bit. And just so you remember I said I'm off of Instagram. It's been over a year now. I think it was a year, April, that I haven't been on it.
Yeah.
I also haven't been uploading stuff on Vero and stuff that much.
Me neither. Just the New York stuff was the last thing.
Yeah. I've been, considering where I was in terms of social media and presence, I've cut back a lot. And, the only place I seem to be putting pictures up is in my Facebook local neighborhood groups and stuff like that. And so my audience is, in a sense, my local people, my neighbors, which actually I'm quite happy with, in a sense, because it feels like it makes, and you guys too, our unusual collective, my group of 5 friends. I don't remember where we are now in that group. That almost counts more in some sense, like having a smaller audience and not sharing out to the world. I'm finding like I'm surviving, and I don't necessarily take I still like to take pictures, and I still like to, they're meaningful to me. So, the audience of, I didn't have a big following on Instagram, like 2,800 people, who cares? I don't really care anymore. Yeah. Like, it hasn't changed my life. I'm like, I'm not, it's like the world hasn't ended, I still take, I think, good photography, and then, maybe, I don't know, maybe less influenced by the mob. As it were. So, all right.
Yeah.
I think we covered that. To each his own. Yeah. I'd like to hear if anybody has got some ideas about this, if they want to reach out to us and tell us. I would like to hear what you guys have to say. I'm going to put the link to Kilby's video in our show notes, but please just go to his YouTube channel and follow him. He's probably one of the better photography discussions on YouTube that exists, I think. And it was great having him on the show a while back. I would love to have him on again. So,
yeah, anyway, me too.
Yeah. All right, Ward. So, where in the world can you be found in this? Of course, we just get off of talking about social media. Now it's like, where in the social media world?
Let's load it up here. And so, by the way, to make things more efficient, Antonio suggested, I'm just telling our dear listener, to write down what our social media contacts are so that I wouldn't be stumbling over them like I do.
Well, I do the same thing too.
Freaking show. So you can, and I might speed through these. You might have to slow me down because I'm actually reading them. You can find me on Vero and Twitter at wrosinphoto. Find me on Instagram at wardrosinfineart. That's WARDROSIN Fine Art. Facebook, I'm at Ward Rosin Photography, or the short name would be Ward Rosin Photo. My website, where I sell the book, the Between Dust and Sky book about the Handhills Lake Stampede, is at rosin.ca. And I have that little business selling lens adapters and Seven Artisans lenses. And it's at ornis.photo, ORNIS.photo. And Antonio,
our unofficial sponsor,
Antonio. And where can we find you?
Where can you find me? Okay, Vero, Twitter, Flickr. I'm at AM Rosario. My Instagram is AM Rosario too, but you can see my pictures, but don't follow me there. Website is amrosario.com. My Facebook, which is where I post a lot of pictures, is Rosario Photo. And our podcast website is streetshots.photography. I just changed our name on Facebook. So now we're facebook.com Street Shots Podcast.
Nice.
So I remember I had switched to manual up there for a while, so I just switched it. So we are on Facebook. I'd like to bring that. I'd like to get some people in Facebook. So
I vote we change it to switch to aperture priority.
Okay. We'll think about that one. Anyway, so you guys, if you want to call in and leave us a short voicemail, we have a voicemail recording service, speakpipe.com/streetshots. That's SPEAKPIPE.com. Speakpipe. facebook.com/streetshots. And if you want to help support us and buy us a coffee once in a while, that'd be great. And you can go to buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario. I haven't been able to switch that name yet. So if you want to help support the show in some way, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario. So,
well, at least buy Antonio a coffee.
Buy me a coffee. Yeah. Well, hey, I am paying the bills here. Just
when I visit, you buy me a coffee.
I buy you a coffee. Yeah, absolutely. You can buy Opie since he's here right now, my cat. You can help buy him a toy so he doesn't jump on the table so much. But anyway, okie doke. Well, that was a nice long talk, and we covered a lot.
We did.
All right, man. So I appreciate you hanging out with me tonight. And
no problem.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and good night to everybody, and see you in a couple of weeks.
See you later. Good night.
Bye. Also do. All right. Okay. You can hear me okay.
I can hear you 5 by 5.
What does that mean?
On the gauges on the old CB radios, instead of it was basically a dB gauge, right? Like,
Yeah.
And there was 2 scales on it. One was the negative dB, and the other one was a scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you were a full signal, it would click over into 5, and then you're coming in 5 at 5.
Okay. So I had my only CB was a walkie-talkie. It didn't have that. It did have a little thing like this that zipped back and forth like that.
Yeah, my dad had one in his car, and it's great. The quality of that little incandescent light inside that gauge when you're driving home from work in the middle of the night, and maybe someone wants to talk to me, or you pick up the skip from somewhere south of the border, and you'd be hearing truckers in like freaking Texas and Oklahoma, just... It was very cool. It was romantic.
I told you what my handle was, right? Did I ever tell you?
No, you might have. I don't
Pink
know.
Panther.
Oh, yeah, you did.
My friend across the street who had the other radio, he was Droopy Drawers. Did you have a handle?
Yeah, I did. Son of Waterloo Boy. This is
convoluted.
Son of Waterloo Boy. My dad was Waterloo Boy. Waterloo Boy was an old tractor before there were John Deere tractors. He was Waterloo Boy, and he went to train in the factory in Waterloo, Iowa, so he had a connection to it. I didn't.
You had to say that fast, too, right?
Yeah, I just became son of, and then people laughed at that. Yeah.